The polished glass doors hissed open, spilling a wave of chilled air into the heat of the afternoon. Sylvia Morgan stepped inside Easton Plaza with her purse slung neatly against her side. To the security team, she was no more than another middle-aged black woman with a heavy bag, one more shadow in the stream of shoppers. To them, she was easy to doubt, easier to dismiss. They marked her the way hunters track an animal, not with skill, but with expectation. Two guards adjusted their formation as if rehearsed. The taller one, Kent, spoke into his radio without lowering his voice. His partner, Delgado, shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking from Sylvia's calm stride to the tiled floor. They thought she did not notice, but she caught every detail in the mirrored storefronts. 2 decades of discipline had trained her eyes to see what others missed. Sylvia let her steps fall evenly, refusing to grant them the satisfaction of a stumble. She had come only for one thing, a birthday gift for her goddaughter. After weeks buried beneath spreadsheets and quarterly reviews at the logistics firm where she managed operations, the idea of buying something delicate, something beautiful, felt like air breaking through water. But peace was fragile in Easton Plaza. Inside a boutique scented faintly of vanilla and expensive polish, Sylvia found herself face to face with a woman whose smile was sharper than glass. Miranda, the store manager, wore a blazer so stiff it seemed to armor her. Her tone dripped suspicion. "Can I help you?" "Just browsing, thank you," Sylvia replied softly, letting her voice stay smooth though her pulse had quickened. She leaned toward a display of charm bracelets. Each one gleamed under the lights like tiny promises. She thought of her goddaughter's shy grin, the way the girl clutched books to her chest as if they were shields. This gift was meant to say, "I see you. You matter." Miranda followed Sylvia's reflection in the glass. Outside, Kent and Delgado lingered by the entrance, pretending to study a map they already knew by heart. The performance was insultingly poor. When Sylvia pointed at a silver bracelet shaped like a bird in flight, Miranda's fingers trembled as she unlocked the case. Her fear was not of theft, but of the phantom she believed Sylvia represented. The weight of that presumption pressed heavier than steel. "I'll take," Sylvia began. "Empty your bag," Miranda cut in. The room froze. Even the jazz on the speaker seemed to choke. Shoppers turned, curiosity sharpening into judgment. Sylvia stood very still. "Excuse me? A piece is missing." "I saw you slip something inside," Miranda said louder, her confidence swelling with the arrival of the 2 guards. Kent stepped forward, hand resting on his belt. Delgado hung back, unease written across his brow. "That's false," Sylvia said, her voice low but carrying. "I've touched nothing except what you placed in my hand. Open the bag. On the counter. Now." Her purse suddenly felt like a brand against her side. She had saved for months to buy it, a small indulgence for herself, yet now it was twisted into evidence of a crime she had not committed. The accusation cut deep, but anger burned brighter. "I will not," she said evenly. "You have no cause." Kent's jaw tightened. Last chance. Sylvia's back straightened. Years of long nights, of glass ceilings she had shattered with patience, of boardroom dismissals she had endured, all of it coiled inside her spine like tempered steel. She would not bend. "This is harassment," she told them. "You are targeting me because of my skin, not my actions." Kent raised his radio. "Code 10. Non-compliant subject at Crystal's boutique. Requesting police backup." Phones lifted from the crowd, red dots blinking. Strangers recorded, eager for spectacle. Then the glass door rattled as a new figure entered. Officer Raymond Keene, uniform crisp, badge polished like a weapon. His reputation had slithered through the city long before his arrival, quick with cuffs, quicker with force. "What do we have here?" he boomed, his gaze locking on Sylvia with a predator's smile. She answered steadily, "This is a misunderstanding that can be cleared with camera footage." But Keene's hand was already at her shoulder. Without warning, he slammed her against the glass wall. The sound rattled through the boutique like a gunshot. Shoppers gasped. Sylvia's cheek pressed against cold glass. "You don't tell me how to do my job," he hissed, twisting her arms behind her. "This is excessive force. You are violating—" "You have the right to shut up," he snarled. The cuffs clicked tight, metal biting her wrists. The crowd shifted, voices rising in protest. Some muttered, some shouted, but none moved forward. Phones multiplied, capturing her humiliation frame by frame. Keene paraded her through the mall, each step a spectacle. Children pointed, adults whispered, the chant of whispers swelling into a wave. Outside, the sun blazed against her eyes. Keene forced her toward the patrol car. Shoppers spilled into the parking lot, drawn by the noise. "Before this goes further," Sylvia said clearly, her voice steady despite the fire in her chest, "you should know something." "Save it for booking," Keene snapped. "I am Sylvia Morgan, Chief Operating Officer of Sterling Freight. My credentials are in my pocket. You could have asked before dragging me through glass like a criminal." Keene faltered. For a fraction of a second, his bravado cracked. The crowd pressed closer, their murmurs swelling into outrage. Someone shouted, "She's an executive!" Another, "They arrested her for shopping!" The badge he yanked from her pocket gleamed in the sunlight, proof against his narrative. His hand shook as he held it aloft. "Fake," he barked, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. The crowd erupted, anger rolling like thunder. Phones streamed live, comments pouring faster than he could control. The mask of authority he wore so comfortably slipped, revealing fear beneath. Sylvia stood tall despite the cuffs cutting into her wrists. Her voice carried across the lot with calm precision. "You are making a very costly mistake, officer." The chant rose from the crowd, stronger this time. "Let her go. Let her go." Keene's face reddened, his grip tightening, but his power shrank with every voice that joined. The sound was no longer a murmur. It was a storm. Sylvia lifted her chin, her gaze sweeping across the witnesses, each phone a mirror reflecting truth. She had endured countless indignities in silence. Not this time. The humiliation seared her, but beneath it, something stirred, fierce and unyielding. In the glare of the setting sun, as the chant thundered louder, she realized the moment had shifted. What was meant to break her might instead ignite something larger than herself. The cuffs dug into her skin. The crowd pressed forward. Keene's face twisted, caught between rage and fear. Sylvia's eyes locked on his, steady as stone. This is only the beginning. The patrol car's doors slammed shut with a metallic thud that echoed across the lot. Sylvia sat rigid in the back seat, wrists raw from the cuffs. Officer Keene strutted toward the driver's side, his smirk practiced for the crowd that still chanted beyond the yellow lines. Their voices carried, swelling with fury. Phones glowed like tiny torches in the dusk, each one a witness he could not silence. Inside the car, the air smelled of vinyl and sweat. Sylvia steadied her breathing, letting her rage settle into something sharper. She had learned long ago that anger, untempered, only fed the fire of men like Keene. But beneath the calm mask, her thoughts spun with precision. Every second mattered. Every word mattered. At the curb, another police cruiser screeched to a halt. The crowd hushed as Sergeant Cole Patterson stepped out, his broad frame cutting through the tension. He moved with measured calm, the way seasoned officers did when they knew every eye was on them. His gaze swept the scene. The cuffs, the shaken crowd, Keene puffed up with authority he hadn't earned. "Officer Keene," Patterson said evenly, "mind telling me why a corporate executive is chained in front of half the city?" Keene stiffened. She resisted. Possible theft. Procedure. Procedure? Patterson's brows rose. Funny. I saw the footage on my way here. Half the city did. That doesn't look like procedure. That looks like humiliation. The crowd roared approval. Keene flushed, muttering something about impersonation, about fake credentials. But his words faltered as Patterson opened the rear door and leaned in. "You all right, Ms. Morgan?" he asked softly. Sylvia met his eyes, calm, steady. "I'm fine, but this is bigger than me. You know it." Patterson studied her a moment longer, then nodded. He motioned to another officer. "Uncuff her." The crowd erupted, clapping, chanting louder. Keene protested, voice cracking with desperation. "Sergeant, she's lying. I had probable cause." "No, you had prejudice," Patterson said flatly. His voice carried like a gavel. The cuffs snapped open. Sylvia rubbed her wrists, the angry red marks proof of the violation. She did not thank them. Gratitude would suggest mercy had been granted. Instead, she straightened her blazer, lifted her chin, and faced the crowd. "This isn't just about me," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "This is about every person who's been cornered, accused, humiliated for no reason except the color of their skin. I won't stay silent. Not anymore." The chant shifted. "Justice for Morgan. Justice for Morgan." Keene's face twisted with fury. Patterson gestured sharply, pulling him aside, but the crowd had already seen too much. Phones streamed every angle. Truth had escaped the walls they tried to build around it. Later that night, Sylvia sat in her quiet home, the silence heavy after the roar of the crowd. Her wrists ached, her body throbbed from the glass wall's impact, but what haunted her most was the memory of Keene's voice hissing in her ear, his certainty that no one would believe her. That certainty had been rattled tonight, but she knew men like him did not retreat. They recalculated. Her phone buzzed. A message from Naomi Ellis, her closest friend, an attorney who never shied from battles others deemed impossible. "Call me. Now." Sylvia dialed. Naomi's voice was sharp, urgent. "I saw the footage. It's already gone viral. Every news outlet wants a statement." Sylvia exhaled slowly. "And what happens when the department rewrites the story? They'll call me hostile, aggressive, uncooperative. They'll paint me as the stereotype they need me to be." "They will try," Naomi said. "But you have evidence. Witnesses, videos. We build a case. You stay disciplined. No interviews yet. Let them sweat first." Sylvia closed her eyes. Exhaustion pulling at her, but beneath it burned resolve. "They'll come for me." "Of course they will," Naomi said. "Which is why you're not going to face this alone." The next morning, Sylvia sat at her desk at Sterling Freight, fingers poised above the keyboard. The office hummed with the usual rhythm, phones ringing, printers humming, but every glance she caught from colleagues carried something sharper. Pity from some, suspicion from others. She knew the footage had reached them too. She opened a blank document and began typing, every detail of the incident while it was fresh. Time, location, names, sequence. She described Keene's force, Miranda's accusation, Kent's radio call. The report grew long, clinical, stripped of emotion, just facts sharpened into a blade. She saved it twice, uploaded copies to encrypted drives. Too many reports vanished when they cut too close to the truth. At noon, she received an internal email marked urgent. Subject: Incident report, pending review. Her name filled the lines of accusation: combative, hostile, resistant. The narrative already shifting. Keene's fingerprints all over it. Sylvia stared at the words until they blurred. They were building their version, brick by brick, hoping to bury her beneath it. She shut her laptop and rose. Enough waiting. That evening, she met Naomi at a quiet diner on the edge of the city. The neon sign buzzed faintly above them, its red glow spilling across cracked vinyl booths. Naomi spread papers across the table, case files from other clients. "Look at this," she said. 6 arrests in the past year. Same officer, same mall, same charges, resisting arrest, assaulting an officer. Every one of them black. Everyone pressured into plea deals. Sylvia flipped through the files, her pulse quickening. The pattern was unmistakable. How many others? These are just the ones who fought back, Naomi said. Most couldn't afford lawyers. They pled out, probation, fines, fees, a cycle they can't escape. Sylvia's hands tightened around the file. This isn't just negligence, it's organized. Naomi leaned in, voice low. And profitable. The probation contracts are outsourced to a private company tied to the mall's ownership. Every false arrest feeds their system. People are commodities. The revelation sank into Sylvia like ice. She had spent her career mastering logistics, understanding supply chains, how profit flowed through invisible corridors, and now she saw it clearly. Lives turned into currency, bodies into revenue streams. The air in the diner thickened with the weight of it. Sylvia closed the file slowly. Then we burn their chain down. Naomi studied her, eyes narrowing. That's not logistics, Sylvia. That's war. Sylvia lifted her coffee, steady hands betraying none of the storm within. Then it's a war they started. The bell above the door jingled as a man entered, baseball cap pulled low, his face shadowed. He ordered nothing, slid into a booth near the door, and pulled out his phone. His eyes flicked toward them, then away. Naomi noticed too. You're being followed. Sylvia did not turn. She stirred her coffee, her reflection steady in the dark liquid. Good. That means they're afraid. The man's phone camera tilted slightly in their direction. Naomi lowered her voice. We need to move carefully. They'll try to smear you, silence you, maybe worse. Sylvia's gaze stayed fixed on the coffee. They already tried. The man shifted, typing rapidly. Outside, a black sedan idled at the curb, engine running through no driver stepped out. Naomi reached for the files, sliding them quickly into her bag. We should leave separately. Sylvia nodded, standing, adjusting her blazer. Her voice was low but certain. They think I'll back down. They don't know me at all. She walked toward the door. The stranger's eyes following her, the sedan's engine purring like a predator waiting. Outside, the night air pressed cool against her skin. For a brief moment, the world was still. But she felt the gaze, the shadow trailing her steps. The war had begun. The morning after the diner, Sylvia's street looked unchanged. Lawns trimmed, sprinklers ticking in arcs, neighbors wheeling bins to the curb. Ordinary. Too ordinary. She stood at her kitchen window with coffee cooling in her hand, scanning for what didn't belong. The black sedan was gone, but its absence felt louder than its presence. She had slept little. The marks on her wrists throbbed against the porcelain mug. Her thoughts churned through patterns, how arrests at Easton Plaza tied into probation contracts, how each charge fed into revenue streams. Naomi's files confirmed it. This wasn't coincidence. It was a machine. And Sylvia had seen machines break. Her phone buzzed. A message from Naomi. Meet me at the office. Early. Found something bigger. By the time Sylvia reached the law office, the sun was barely above the skyline. Naomi's desk was covered in files, yellow notes sticking out like battle flags. Her eyes were shadowed, her voice brisk. 47 cases, Naomi said. All within 18 months. Same mall, same officers, nearly all the defendants black or brown. But here's the kicker. 86% pled guilty. That's way above normal rates. Sylvia leaned over the papers, her logistics-trained mind sorting numbers into flows. Because plea deals were cheaper than fighting. Cheaper until probation bled them dry. Naomi slid a contract forward. Every plea routed to Horizon Compliance, a private company billing monthly fees, testing fees, monitoring fees, owned by Easton Holdings, The same corporation that owns the mall. The words struck with a clarity that left no room for denial. Arrests weren't mistakes. They were inventory. People were being harvested. Sylvia's throat tightened, but her voice stayed calm. How deep does it go? Naomi hesitated. The company's CEO, Richard Easton, sits on the city's economic council. The judges assigning probation. One of them receives donations from Easton's foundation. It's systemic. Sylvia straightened slowly. Then it has to be dismantled systematically. The office went silent. Outside, the city hummed unaware. Inside, the air thickened with the enormity of what they faced. Naomi finally exhaled. If we move forward, there's no going back. They'll try to destroy your career, your name, maybe your safety. They already tried, Sylvia answered. Her tone carried no bravado, just fact. Naomi nodded. Then we start by documenting everything. Every file, every testimony, and we find allies, inside and out. That afternoon, Sylvia returned to her company office. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights pressed against her nerves. Conversations hushed as she passed. Colleagues had seen the footage, read the headlines. Sympathy clung to some glances, judgment to others. Her inbox overflowed. Reporters seeking comment, executives demanding damage control, anonymous threats written in jagged words. She ignored them all. Pulling up the internal arrest records database, she still had clearance to access. Fingers flying, she cross-referenced Easton Plaza arrests with officer assignments, probation referrals, and quarterly earnings reports. Patterns emerged in stark numbers. Spikes before shareholder meetings, sudden waves of charges when revenue dipped. Her chest tightened. It was worse than she thought. Not random, not isolated. A production line. She printed key documents and slid them into her briefcase. As she turned, she caught whispers at the edge of the room. Her co-workers averted their eyes too quickly. Trust thinned into suspicion. Someone here could be feeding information back to the very people she was investigating. That evening, Sylvia drove past Easton Plaza. The mall gleamed in twilight, its glass facade reflecting orange sky. Shoppers drifted in and out, but she saw what others didn't. Guards stationed at every entrance, radios in hand, eyes scanning not for crime, but for targets. Near the fountain, a young mother clutched her purse close, hurrying her child along. Across the concourse, a teenager was being shadowed, his every move catalogued as if the verdict was already written. Sylvia's stomach knotted. How many stories like hers had been buried? How many families trapped in probation's chokehold? She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale. "This isn't just about me," she whispered. Her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She answered, voice steady. A young woman spoke quickly, nervously. "Ms. Morgan? My name's Lila Torres. I'm a journalist with the Herald. I've been following your case. But what's happening at the mall? I've been digging for months. I think we can help each other." Sylvia's instinct was caution, but something in the woman's tone, a mix of fear and conviction, stilled her. "What do you know?" "I've traced money from Horizon Compliance to offshore accounts tied to Easton Holdings. I've hit walls, records disappearing, sources going silent. But your arrest? It blew everything open. People are finally talking. If you'll meet me, I can show you." Sylvia hesitated, the echo of Naomi's warning in her ear. Yet she heard the urgency, the possibility of leverage. "Tomorrow. Early. Neutral ground." The next morning, Sylvia met Lila at a community center off Riverside. The building smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. Inside, a small group waited around folding tables cluttered with folders and photographs. A tall man with silver at his temples introduced himself as Reverend Caleb Grant. Teachers, shop owners, activists sat beside him. Each face carried fatigue, but also fire. "We've been documenting everything for years," Grant said. False arrests, harassment, intimidation. But complaints vanish. Internal reviews go nowhere. The city buries it. We needed someone inside to see it. Then your arrest happened. Lila opened her laptop, pulling up spreadsheets, bank transfers, emails. The money trail is real. Horizon funds flow into shell companies, kickbacks to officials, bonuses tied to arrest numbers. But we can't prove intent without testimony. That's where you come in. Sylvia sat, studying the faces around the table. Teachers with tired eyes. A barber who clenched his fists as he spoke of his nephew's arrest. A mother holding photos of her son, probation fees scrawled on the back. Each story sharpened her resolve. She had thought her humiliation was singular. It was a pattern etched into hundreds of lives. She leaned forward, voice low but firm. Then we don't just tell my story. We tell all of them. Together. The room stilled. Grant's gaze held hers, steady, searching. Finally, he nodded. Then you're not just fighting for yourself anymore, Ms. Morgan. You're leading a movement. A flicker of unease crossed Sylvia's mind. She had never sought leadership beyond boardrooms and supply chains, but the weight of their eyes pressed heavy and undeniable. Outside, the evening sun burned red across the horizon. Sylvia left the community center with Lila at her side. The air felt charged, every sound amplified. She sensed eyes again. Across the street, a man in a dark jacket leaning against a lamppost, phone raised. She slowed, muscles tightening. Lila whispered, "He's been at my office before, always watching." The man slipped into a car, its headlights igniting like warning flares. It pulled away slowly, deliberately, as if promising return. Sylvia exhaled through her nose, steadying herself. Then they know. They know we're closing in. At home that night, she found her mailbox stuffed. No stamps, no return addresses. Inside were envelopes filled with hate, racial slurs scrawled in jagged ink, threats against her family, photos of her house taken from the street. One contained a picture of her goddaughter's school with words cut from magazines. "Next time, we won't miss." Her hands trembled as she spread them on the table, but not with fear. The threats were proof that the machine felt her weight against it. She gathered the letters carefully, slid them into a folder. Tomorrow she would bring them to Naomi, to Lila, to Reverend Grant. Another piece of evidence, another nail in Easton's coffin. But as she sat in the darkened kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the silence, a thought pressed heavy on her chest. Someone close, someone with access, was feeding her movements to the enemy. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A single message. "Stop now, Sylvia, or the next strike won't be a warning." She stared at the glow until it dimmed. Her reflection in the glass door stared back, eyes calm, jaw set, resolve deepening. They thought fear would silence her, but fear was no longer hers to carry. Rain slicked the streets the next morning, turning the city into a mirror of gray light and distorted reflections. Sylvia drove slowly, wipers smearing arcs across the windshield. Her briefcase sat on the passenger seat, the folder of threats inside, each envelope a pulse of danger against her ribs. She had spent the night cataloging every one, dates, times, details. Evidence, not intimidation. But evidence meant nothing without trust, and trust was scarce. At the precinct, murmurs followed her like shadows. Though her badge still hung heavy at her side, suspension rumors crackled in the air. She caught clipped words, unstable, liability, troublemaker. Each syllable another brick in the wall closing around her. She ignored them all, heading straight for Lieutenant Marcus Hale's office. Hale was an old colleague, one of the few she once trusted. Broad-shouldered, calm-voiced, he had vouched for her years earlier when others doubted her leadership. His office smelled of burnt coffee and ink, papers stacked in uneven towers. He looked up as she entered, expression guarded but warm enough to sting with memory. "Got a minute?" she asked. "For you?" "Always." He gestured to the chair. She laid the folder on his desk. One by one, she pulled the envelopes free, spreading them like evidence in a courtroom. Hate scribbled in jagged ink, photos of her house, a crosshair drawn over her face. Hale's jaw tightened. "Jesus, Sylvia, have you reported these?" "To who? The same system profiting off this mess?" Her voice sharpened. "This goes beyond Raines and the mall. Horizon Compliance, Easton Holdings, judges, officers, contracts. It's a chain, and I'm in the way." Hale studied her, brows knit. "You're saying the department's complicit?" "I'm saying it's organized, and I have proof building." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "This could shake the entire foundation, you know that? Careers, reputations, maybe the department itself." "Maybe it needs shaking," she said. Hale paced behind his desk, silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "All right, I'll make some calls, quietly. See who else might step forward." Relief flickered, small but real. "Thank you, Marcus. I knew I could count on you." He gave a tired smile. "Just watch yourself. Stay with family for a few nights. Let me assign a patrol car. I can handle myself." She gathered the folder, but his words lingered. Stay with family. It sounded less like advice, more like a veiled warning. That night, Sylvia pulled into her driveway to find the glow of spray paint glaring back at her. Traitor slashed across her car in dripping red. Her stomach dropped. The paint was fresh, the fumes still sharp. Keys had carved words deeper into the metal. "Keep quiet, Captain." Her blood iced. Only someone from inside the department would use her rank. She scanned the street. Nothing moved. Shadows shifted harmlessly in the breeze. But she felt eyes. Always eyes. She snapped photos quickly, documenting the damage. Then she saw the detail that froze her, the message scratched in a style she recognized. Not the words, but the sharp, angular strokes, the way the letters tilted. She had seen handwriting like this in Hale's notes before. Her chest constricted. Doubt slithered in where trust once lived. Had she just handed him everything? Names, evidence, her next moves? Inside, her kitchen light buzzed faintly. She dropped into a chair, badge gleaming on the table. 20 years of service, 20 years of believing the badge meant protection, justice, integrity. Now it gleamed like an accusation. The question pressed heavier than the threats. Was the rot deeper than she ever imagined? She thought of Naomi's files, of Lila's spreadsheets, of Reverend Grant's weary determination. Allies existed, yes, but the walls were closing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. "Meet tomorrow, early. Big break. Bring everything." Sylvia breathed deep, grounding herself. She tucked the threatening letters into a clean folder, slid her badge back into its case, and locked both inside her briefcase. Not trust. Not even suspicion. Just survival. Sleep never came. When dawn finally bled pale through the blinds, her eyes were red, her body heavy, but her mind was sharpened into steel. At Jerry's diner, the coffee was burnt and the vinyl cracked, but its anonymity was protection. Lila arrived first, messenger bag clutched tight, eyes darting around the room before she slid into the booth. "Sorry I'm late," she said, though she wasn't. "But you're going to want to see this." She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were corporate memos on Easton Holdings' letterhead. Sylvia scanned the first page, her stomach dropping. Security protocols dressed in euphemism, high-risk demographics, loss prevention initiatives, coordinated enforcement. Page 3 was worse. Board notes detailing bonuses tied to arrests, quotas assigned by demographic. They weren't hiding profiling. They were institutionalizing it. They knew exactly what they were doing, Lila whispered. And the probation pipeline? It's right here. Every arrest feeds Horizon. They profit twice, first through security, then through probation. Sylvia slid the papers back into the envelope, fingers trembling slightly. This is the chain, the whole machine. And now we have proof, Lila said. But we need to move carefully. Your car, those letters, someone close is feeding them information. We can't share this with anyone until we're ready to go public. Sylvia's mind flicked to Hale, his warning, his smile, the fresh paint on her car. Her chest tightened, but her voice stayed level. Then this stays between us. No one else. Lila nodded, clutching her bag as though it carried more than paper, as though it carried survival itself. They parted outside under a thin drizzle, streets shining with reflections. Lila headed downtown, Sylvia toward home. The envelope sat heavy in her jacket pocket, every step feeling watched. At home, she went straight to her study. Her father's oak desk still bore the scars of the break-in years earlier, but its hidden drawer remained intact. She placed the envelope inside, locked it, and slipped the key back around her neck. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. Not relief, never relief, but a flicker of hope. She fixed a small dinner, checked her cameras twice, and sat in the silence. The house hummed with ordinary sounds, the fridge, the pipes, but everything felt taut, fragile. She imagined what would come next. A press conference, a series of articles, the moment Easton's empire fractured under evidence too heavy to deny. She pictured the look on Keene's face, on Hale's if her suspicions proved true. Sleep came easily that night. She dreamed of chains snapping one by one, falling silent onto concrete. But dawn brought silence too sharp, too deliberate. Her phone buzzed. No response from Lila. Not a text, not a call. Hours dragged. By noon, anxiety gnawed her nerves raw. She dialed again, straight to voicemail. Then the headline lit her screen. Investigative journalist hospitalized after brutal attack. Lila's photo stared back at her. Sylvia's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering against the tile. The hospital's fluorescent lights hummed above Sylvia like insects trapped in glass. She moved quickly down the corridor, her blazer damp from rain, her pulse pounding as though it had outrun her body. Reporters crowded the lobby, their cameras waiting to devour any glimpse of the story's next chapter. She had shown her badge to push past, though it felt like a relic of a life slipping away. Room 412. She stopped in the doorway. Lila lay propped in a hospital bed, her left arm encased in plaster, her face bruised and swollen, but her eyes, those eyes still blazed, fierce as ever. "You should be resting," Sylvia murmured, moving to the bedside. Lila's lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "Should see the other guy." Sylvia sat, folding her hands tightly in her lap to stop them from trembling. "What happened?" "Professional job." Lila's voice rasped but carried certainty. "Walking to my car. 2 of them. Knew exactly how to hurt without killing." Sylvia's fists clenched. "Did you see their faces?" "Better." Lila shifted, wincing. "One of them slipped. Jacket rode up. I saw the badge." Sylvia froze. "A badge?" Lila nodded slowly. "Department issue. Same as yours." The truth landed like a blade. Not suspicion, not paranoia, confirmation. Someone inside had crossed the line from silence to violence. "I'm sorry," Sylvia whispered. "Don't." Lila's hand, bruised but steady, gripped Sylvia's wrist. "This proves we're close. They wouldn't risk this if we weren't." Sylvia met her gaze, fire meeting fire. "Then they should be afraid of me now." "Good." Lila breathed. Because I'm not stopping. Neither should you. A nurse appeared in the doorway, arms folded, protective. She needs rest. 5 more minutes, Lila pleaded. The nurse hesitated, then stepped away. Sylvia leaned closer. The memos are safe. Hidden. Lila's eyes flickered with relief. Then we still have leverage. We use it wisely. They'll try again, harder. We hit first. Where? Sylvia asked. The council meeting this week, Lila said, her voice gaining strength. Public forum, cameras everywhere. They can't silence us if the whole city's watching. Sylvia pictured it. The marble chamber, the rows of officials, the cameras feeding every word into living rooms across the city. A place built to stage power, turned into a stage for truth. She nodded once. Then we prepare. That night, Sylvia stood before her bathroom mirror, index cards spread across the counter. She read aloud, voice steady though her hands trembled at first. My name is Sylvia Morgan. 2 weeks ago, I was falsely arrested while shopping. But this isn't about me. It's about a machine that feeds on the lives of the vulnerable. Her reflection stared back, eyes shadowed but unflinching. She practiced until her voice no longer quivered, until each word carried weight like iron. The next day blurred into hours of preparation. Naomi joined her at the diner, files spread like maps of a battlefield, witness affidavits, videos, spreadsheets tracing money through shell corporations, each piece a weapon, but only powerful if wielded at the right moment. You start with your story, Naomi advised. Draw them in. Then you pivot to the bigger picture, the numbers, the money trail. End with the evidence no one can deny. Sylvia wrote notes, crossed them out, rewrote them. Her script became leaner, sharper, until only the essential remained. By nightfall, she was drained but steady. She set her suit out with ritual precision, sharp blazer, pressed trousers, polished shoes. Her badge rested beside them, its gleam muted by shadows. She hesitated, then pinned it to her lapel. Not for authority, for proof. Morning brought a city on edge. News stations speculated endlessly, about her, about the mall, about corruption rumors swirling like storm clouds. Commentators questioned her stability, her motives. Others hailed her as a symbol. The noise buzzed everywhere, but Sylvia tuned it out. She arrived at City Hall as twilight fell. The council chamber already filled to bursting. Cameras jostled for space, citizens crammed shoulder to shoulder, their whispers rising like wind before a storm. Signs bobbed above the crowd. Justice for Morgan. End the pipeline. On the dais, the mayor dabbed sweat from his forehead. Council members shifted uneasily in their chairs. And there, 2 rows back, sat Officer Keene, smirking, whispering to Richard Easton himself. Their arrogance twisted Sylvia's stomach, but also sharpened her resolve. She took her place in line behind other citizens waiting to speak. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady around the folder tucked under her arm. Then, like a spark, phones across the chamber lit up. Whispers surged. The unedited footage of her arrest had just gone live. Lila's doing. The crowd erupted. Gasps, curses, murmurs spreading like wildfire. Next speaker, the mayor said, gavel striking, though his voice wavered. Sylvia stepped forward. Silence rippled, then swelled as recognition spread. She stood at the podium, folder laid carefully before her. The microphone hummed. My name is Sylvia Morgan, she began, voice carrying across marble walls. 2 weeks ago, I was dragged out of a store in handcuffs. Not because of what I did, but because of who I am. But this is not only my story. She opened the folder, holding up the first memo. This is evidence of a machine designed to profit from humiliation. Easton Holdings, Horizon Compliance, a partnership between corporate greed and corrupt policing, arrest quotas, targeted demographics, Probation fees bleeding families dry. Gasps. Flashes of cameras. She continued, steady as stone. I have financial records showing payments to judges who fast-tracked pleas, emails between executives and officers coordinating arrests, victim statements that echo mine 100 times over. Her voice rose. This city's justice system has been turned into a business, and we, its citizens, are the merchandise. Keene shot to his feet, face red. Lies, he shouted, striding down the aisle. She's fabricating all of this. The crowd jeered. Phones shot upward, recording every step. Sylvia did not flinch. Then why are you afraid of the truth? Keene's hand twitched toward his holster, but 2 uniformed officers stepped in front of him, blocking his path. The room erupted, chants thundering, "Justice! Justice!" The mayor's gavel cracked against wood, futile. Council members whispered frantically, their faces pale. Sylvia gripped the podium tighter. This ends now. The chant grew louder, echoing like thunder through marble. Keene strained against the officers, his face twisted in rage, his eyes locked on hers like a curse. Sylvia held his gaze, her own steady, unyielding. The chamber trembled with voices rising together, louder than any gavel, louder than any threat. And in that suspended breath, Sylvia knew, the machine had been cracked open. But the fight was far from over. The chamber emptied slowly, as though the crowd feared leaving would break the spell of what had just unfolded. Reporters surged toward Sylvia, their microphones thrust like weapons, voices overlapping in a chorus of demands. She kept her chin high, lips pressed tight. Not yet. Not here. State investigators had moved in swiftly, their dark suits cutting through the chaos. They collected files, secured exits, whispered into radios with efficiency that spoke of preparation. Richard Easton had already been escorted out, face pale, his bravado collapsing under the weight of exposure. Officer Keene had been dragged back, handcuffed, still shouting threats no one believed. Sylvia slipped from the chamber with Naomi at her side. Cameras followed, flashes searing the hallway like lightning. Outside, night had deepened. But the plaza pulsed with protest. Hundreds filled the steps, their chants carrying into the city. Justice for Morgan. End the pipeline. For the first time in weeks, Sylvia felt something shift. Not relief, but gravity, tilting toward truth. Back at Naomi's office, they sat amid a battlefield of files and glowing screens. Lila, arm in a sling, perched at the edge of a chair, exhaustion and determination etched into her bruised face. Reverend Grant leaned heavily against the table, his voice low but steady. You cracked it open, he said, but now they'll fight harder. When power is cornered, it bites. Naomi poured coffee into paper cups, her hands shaking despite her calm voice. The city's machine won't crumble overnight. Judges, council members, police brass, they'll spin, deny, distract. You'll be painted as unstable, vindictive. They already have, Sylvia said. She pulled her phone from her pocket, scrolling through notifications. Headlines blared across the screen. Captain Morgan unhinged, hero or liability, executive turns on own department. The battle for narrative had already begun. They can't bury the footage, Lila said fiercely. The internet doesn't forget. The people saw everything. Yes, Grant murmured, but the system counts on fatigue. Outrage burns fast. Then silence settles back in. Sylvia rubbed her wrists, faint scars still visible. Then we don't let silence come. The room fell quiet. Each person weighed the cost of what was coming. Hours later, Sylvia returned home. The street was empty, quiet except for crickets and the hum of street lamps. She scanned instinctively, rooftops, parked cars, corners of shadows, before unlocking her door. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and metal. Her study door was ajar. She froze. Slowly, she pushed it open. Papers were scattered across the floor, her father's oak desk forced open, the hidden drawer splintered. The envelope, the memos, the financial records, gone. Her chest hollowed. She had guarded it so carefully, carried the key against her skin, checked the lock twice. Still, someone had breached her sanctuary. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Next time, it won't just be documents. The room spun, rage and dread colliding. They weren't afraid of exposure. They were afraid of permanence. Evidence could be stolen, burned, buried. Witnesses could be silenced. Sylvia sank into the chair, the broken drawer yawning open like a wound. She thought of the faces around that table, the teacher, the barber, the mother clutching her son's photo. How many of their stories had already been erased by fear, by lost evidence, by silence? Her pulse steadied. They could steal papers, but they couldn't steal memory. They couldn't steal voices. She still had the speech, the recordings, the crowd's fury immortalized in 1,000 phones. The truth lived beyond her desk. But she also knew the war had sharpened. No more warnings. Next time, the strike would aim for her life. The following morning, she met Naomi and Lila at the diner again. Rain streaked the windows, muting the world outside. Sylvia placed the empty folder on the table. "They broke in," she said. "Everything's gone." Naomi swore under her breath, pressing her palms to her forehead. "God, we needed that paper trail." Lila leaned forward. "Not all of it. When Martinez attacked me, his phone synced to my backup. I still have duplicates, emails, bank records, some memos. Not everything, but enough to keep them sweating." Relief cracked through Sylvia's chest, though she masked it with a curt nod. "Then we keep multiple copies. Hidden, scattered. They won't erase this again." Naomi studied Sylvia, eyes narrowing. "You're tired. I'm alive. For how long if you keep pressing?" Naomi's voice softened, but the warning was steel. "They've escalated. They vandalized your car, sent threats, broke into your home. This isn't just corruption. It's a network that survives by fear. They'll kill to protect it." Sylvia stirred her coffee slowly, the spoon clinking against porcelain. "Then let them come. I won't bend." The conversation ended when the diner's bell jingled. A man stepped in, shaking off an umbrella. His eyes lingered on their booth a second too long before moving toward the counter. Sylvia noted the bulge at his waist, a holster, half hidden. Plain clothes, but trained. She leaned across the table, voice barely above a whisper. "We're being watched." Naomi's jaw clenched. Lila's eyes flicked nervously to the window, where a sedan idled, its windshield beaded with rain. Sylvia rose calmly, pulling bills from her pocket and setting them on the table. "We leave separately. No patterns, no easy targets." They followed her lead, slipping out one at a time. The sedan remained, engine humming. Sylvia walked past it without breaking stride, though her pulse hammered. She caught her reflection in its tinted glass, small, distorted, but unbroken. That night, alone in her house, she sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. Rain pattered against the windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. Her badge lay on the table beside the empty folder. She touched it lightly, her reflection dim in its worn surface. 20 years of service, now turned against her. She wondered how many others before her had tried to fight and been erased, their stories lost in silence. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. A single line. "You're running out of time." She stared at the glow, then typed her reply with steady fingers. "So are you." Outside, a car rolled slowly down her street, headlights sweeping across her windows before fading into the storm. Sylvia sat in the dark, waiting, every nerve alive, every breath measured. The war was no longer creeping toward her door. It was here, and she would not hide. The storm broke overnight. By morning, the city was washed clean, streets glistening under a pale blue sky. Sylvia stood at her front window, coffee untouched, watching as neighbors carried on with their ordinary routines. Dogs tugged leashes, kids hurried to buses, lawns dripped with rain. To them, the world spun unchanged. To her, every second vibrated with danger. She checked her phone. Dozens of messages. Supporters, reporters, strangers. Her name had become a banner online. Hashtags blazed across feeds. Stand with Sylvia. End the pipeline. Video of her speech at City Hall had been replayed millions of times. Comments split in predictable lines. Outrage, solidarity, venom. Naomi's text arrived. Protest outside Easton Plaza today. Thousands expected. Stay cautious. Sylvia closed her eyes, pressing her forehead briefly to the cool glass. Crowds brought power, but also cover for chaos, for retaliation. Still, she couldn't ignore them. She wouldn't. By midday, she stood at the edge of Easton Plaza, a baseball cap pulled low, her coat collar turned up. The roar of the crowd vibrated in her chest. Signs filled the air. Justice for all. Shut down Horizon. End the cycle. Drums pounded, voices rose, chants rolled like thunder. She moved quietly through the sea of people, anonymous for now. The sheer scale shook her. Hundreds, maybe more. Teenagers with phones held high. Parents with children perched on shoulders. Elderly women gripping walkers but chanting fiercely. Strangers united by fury, by hope, by her name. "This is what solidarity looks like," an older man said beside her, his voice rough but resolute. He didn't recognize her, only spoke to the movement itself. "They thought they could break us, but we've had enough." Sylvia swallowed hard. The man's words wrapped around her, heavy and humbling. Near the fountain, a group of teenagers started a new chant. "Show the truth. Show the truth." The rhythm caught and spread until it echoed across the plaza. Sylvia turned at the sound of a quiet voice. "Captain Morgan?" A young girl, maybe 16, stood clutching her phone, nervous but determined. "I'm Tiana Brooks," she said quickly. "I filmed the first video, the one that went viral." Sylvia blinked, recognition dawning. "That was you?" Tiana nodded. "But there's more. Footage I never released. I started recording before you even walked into the store." She pulled Sylvia aside, away from the chants. On her phone, the video played, Officer Keene entering the boutique, leaning close to Miranda the manager, whispering something before stepping back out of view. Less than a minute later, Sylvia appeared on screen, walking inside. "He set it up," Sylvia whispered. "Exactly," Tiana said. "And it's not just you. I've been tracking him for months. People send me clips, him shadowing shoppers, intimidating kids, always at this mall. I have dozens of videos." Sylvia's pulse quickened. This was the missing link, the proof of premeditation. "Why haven't you released them?" she asked. Tiana hesitated. "Fear. No one would protect me. But after what you did, after this," she gestured at the roaring crowd, "I can't stay quiet." Sylvia placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Then you've done more than you know. You lit the spark." A cheer surged through the plaza as news vans pulled up, reporters spilling out. Cameras swung toward the chanting crowd. The protest had become spectacle. Movement had become headline. But Sylvia's gaze caught on something else. A cluster of men near the mall's main doors, plain clothes, their eyes scanning not the crowd but her. One raised a phone, angling it like a lens. Another touched his ear, murmuring into a mic. Her stomach tightened. Not protesters, not reporters. Operatives. She leaned close to Tiana. "Keep that footage safe. Multiple backups. Don't trust anyone you don't know." Tiana nodded quickly, slipping back into the crowd. Sylvia stepped away, weaving through bodies until she reached the plaza's edge. The men shifted, following with practiced subtlety. She quickened her pace, slipping down a side street. Footsteps echoed behind her, just out of rhythm with the chants. Her phone buzzed. A message from Naomi. "Police moving in. Watch yourself." She ducked into an alley, breath steady despite the adrenaline surging. Trash bins lined the walls, the air thick with damp cardboard. Footsteps followed. Closer now. From the shadows, a voice drawled, "You should have stayed quiet, Morgan." Sylvia froze, hand sliding instinctively toward her sidearm. But she was off duty, unarmed. Two men stepped into the thin strip of daylight. Broad-shouldered, faces masked, movements efficient. Not amateurs. One carried a baton, the other a gloved fist flexing like a threat. Sylvia's mind raced, distance to the street, weight of obstacles, angles of escape. Training coiled in her muscles, but she knew the odds. Still, her voice remained calm. "You think you can stop this with me?" The baton wielder smirked beneath his mask. "We don't need to stop it. Just slow it down. Scare the others off." "You think fear will silence truth?" she asked. "It always has." He lunged. Sylvia sidestepped, grabbing a broken pipe from the ground, the metal cold and slick in her grip. She swung hard, catching his arm, the baton clattering to the pavement. The second man rushed her, fist swinging. Pain exploded across her jaw, but she stayed on her feet, adrenaline flooding her veins. Voices echoed suddenly from the street, shouts, footsteps pounding. Protesters had followed, their phones raised, recording. The masked men froze. Cameras caught everything. The pipe in Sylvia's grip, the baton on the ground. The thugs exposed. One hissed a curse. "This isn't over." They bolted, disappearing into the maze of alleys before the protesters could block them. Sylvia dropped the pipe, breath ragged, blood warm at her lip. Protesters crowded around, offering water, hands, voices of concern. Phones streamed live. She straightened slowly, face bruised but eyes burning. She looked into the nearest lens. "They want me afraid," she said, her voice steady. "They want all of us afraid. But we don't run. We don't hide. We stand." The crowd erupted, chants swelling again, louder, fiercer. "Stand with Morgan. Stand with Morgan." Police sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. Sylvia knew this was only escalation, proof that exposure cut deep, that retaliation would sharpen. But as the chants rolled through the city, vibrating against glass and concrete, she also knew something else. The machine had teeth. But now, so did the truth. And the next strike would decide everything. The council chamber smelled of paper and fear. 3 days had passed since the protest outside Easton Plaza. 3 days since Sylvia fought off masked men in a rain-slick alley while strangers' phones caught every second. The footage had exploded online, fueling outrage that no press release could contain. Now the chamber was ringed with cameras again. State investigators filled the aisles, their notepads poised like blades. The mayor sat stiff, face damp with sweat. Council members whispered, shifting in their chairs. At the front table, Richard Easton's polished calm was gone, his eyes darting like a cornered animal. Sylvia stood at the podium once more. She wore her sharpest suit, the bruises along her jaw fading but visible. Her badge gleamed against her blazer, not as symbol of authority, but as evidence she would not be erased. "My name is Sylvia Morgan," she began. Her voice carried with practiced steadiness. 2 weeks ago, I was humiliated in public, dragged out in handcuffs for a crime I didn't commit. What they meant as silence has become testimony. Not just mine, hundreds of voices. She opened a folder, not paper this time, but a drive, evidence backed up in servers far beyond the city's reach. Here are financial records tracing payments from Easton Holdings to Horizon Compliance. Here are emails between officers and executives setting arrest quotas. Here is proof of judges taking donations to fast-track guilty pleas. She looked directly at Easton, her gaze unflinching. You built a machine that profits from fear, and you believed silence would protect you. Gasps rippled as screens behind her lit up with charts, memos, video clips, Lila's data presented in sharp sequence. Faces of victims filled the chamber, each one a story of lives twisted by false arrests, each one echoing her own. The mayor shifted, throat clearing. Ms. Morgan, these are serious allegations. They're not allegations, Sylvia cut in. They're facts, and they've been buried for years. Her voice sharpened. But the people aren't silent anymore. They're here, outside your doors. They're watching, and they're not going away. From the gallery, the chant began, quiet at first, then swelling. Justice, justice. Council members shrank into their chairs. Investigators moved swiftly, collecting files, serving warrants. The system had cracked, and the light pouring through was blinding. Later, as the chamber emptied, Sylvia stepped outside into cool evening air. The steps of City Hall were packed, thousands this time, their signs like a forest of defiance. When she appeared, a cheer surged so loud it shook the night. She paused, scanning the faces. Some tearful, some fierce, all united. Strangers who had carried her name, but now carried their own stories too. A young man pressed forward, his voice breaking. My brother, probation fees ruined us. You gave us a chance. An older woman touched Sylvia's arm. You made them see us. And Tiana, the teenager with the videos, stood near the front, her phone raised high, broadcasting live. Tell them, Captain, she urged. Sylvia lifted her chin. She hadn't prepared words for this moment, but maybe none were needed. This fight was never mine alone, she said, voice steady against the roar of the crowd. It belongs to every one of you who refused to stay silent. They tried to bury us in fear, but fear doesn't grow. Truth does. The cheer thundered, reverberating across the plaza, spilling into the city beyond. Yet beneath the celebration, Sylvia felt the shadow that lingered. The arrests would begin. Trials would follow. But corruption this deep did not vanish with a single night. Power always found new disguises. As the chants echoed, she caught sight of a man across the street, half hidden in shadow, his face obscured by a hood. He didn't chant, didn't clap. He only watched her, then disappeared into the alley's dark mouth. Her chest tightened. The machine was wounded, not destroyed. Its teeth remained sharp. She turned back to the crowd, forcing calm into her bones. Hope was fragile, easily crushed. But tonight it burned bright, alive in every voice around her. Later, alone in her kitchen, she laid her badge on the table. It gleamed softly in the lamplight, scarred but intact. 20 years of service, marred by betrayal but also vindicated by truth. She touched it once, then set it aside. The badge was no longer her shield. The people were. Her phone buzzed, a message from Naomi. Warrants issued, investigations launched. But stay careful. They'll push back. Sylvia typed a reply. I'm ready. Outside, the city hummed. Sirens in the distance, voices still chanting beyond the night. She leaned back in her chair, exhaustion pressing heavy, but a quiet strength anchoring her deeper than fear. The war wasn't over. But tonight, truth had won a battle. She closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the fridge, the rhythm of her own breathing. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a small, unguarded smile. Then, from outside, came the crunch of tires on gravel. Slow, deliberate. Sylvia's eyes snapped open. The fight was far from finished.